as we've mentioned already today, we are taking a closer look at the cost of living crisis and more so about what support is available to those who are currently in need. So joining us this hour to tell us more is Emma Rowse from Cornwall Voluntary Sector Forum. Emma, thank you for joining us today.
Hi, everyone.
Hiya.
Hello. Emma, it's your first time on Chaos TV, I believe.
It is, yes, I'm a virgin.
Well, welcome to the show, and thank you. We promise we won't be too scary for you.
No.
Yeah.
You couldn't have had better people.
No, absolutely. So let's start off and hand over to you, Emma. Can you give us a quick little introduction of who you are and what you do within the organisation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Chief Executive of Cornwall Voluntary Sector Forum. We're an organisation that's here to support voluntary community and social enterprise organisations across Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So we do that by telling amazing stories like you guys do about all the wonderful things that organisations and charities and community groups do. We lobby for more profile, for more funding, often with our public sector partners like the Council and the NHS. And yeah, we're here to do whatever we can, try and spot opportunities for the future, support you to have conversations, join things up, and whatever really you need from us as your representative organisation.
That sounds wonderful. So you attended the Turning the Tide event. Can you let us know a bit more about what this was and what the aims were?
Yeah, so this was an event that was pulled together by Cornwall Council, but it was an opportunity really for loads of organisations to come together, I guess, to share the challenges that the cost of living situation is already causing and will cause in the future for our people and communities and for our businesses actually across Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly. So we had loads of people there. There was Cornwall Council, we had NHS organisations, we had loads of businesses, Chamber of Commerce, the university, and a range of voluntary sector organisations, including food banks and Citizens Advice that I know you've got on later on, and Department for Work and Pensions. And the aim really was to talk about, well, yes, to understand better what the challenges were that were facing organisations and people and communities, but as importantly, really, to talk about the solutions that we might be able to work on together, and both the things that we could do now, sort of short term to support people in need, in crisis, and longer term about what do we need to do better to work together and get on with delivering those solutions that we're all committed to.
Yeah, and it sounds like a great event, and almost it's like having all those different organizations in one place. Sometimes you just need an event like that, don't you, to get, because everyone's busy, but to get everyone in the same place at the same time, I feel like that helps you the chance to actually achieve something more. Do you agree?
I think you're absolutely right. And actually, it's really important for different groups of organisations to hear about what's happening in other parts of the county, because I think you tend to get a little bit, well, you know what it's like. You work in an organisation, you know loads about what you're doing, but you don't necessarily know what other people around you are getting up to. So actually, it was really important, I think, for our public and private sector partners to hear about the amazing work that's already happening in the voluntary sector and in local communities and community groups up and down the county who are already doing loads of work to support people who are struggling the most. And I'm a bit biased because I work in the sector as you guys do, but I think we're at the forefront of supporting our most vulnerable communities, and I think more funding and support needs to get to the voluntary sector to do more of that work. But it was really exciting to have everyone coming together and coming up with ideas and solutions together, because actually when you do that together, you can do more for more people because you're not all trying to do the same thing and treading on each other's toes.
That sounds wonderful. So you talk about kind of the solutions that you came up with during this. Could you tell us a little bit what they were?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little flavour because obviously we had a whole range of people in the room. So there were things like awareness campaigns to try and reduce the number of people who aren't claiming the benefits that they're entitled to, things like free school meals and pensions credits. Cornwall Council were looking at how they could roll out the use of the low income family tracker to make sure that people are claiming the benefits that they're entitled to. Department for Work and Pensions are exploring opportunities to run a basic income pilot working with Cornwall Council. We've got Cornwall Council reviewing their debt collection practices to make sure that they're being supportive to people who may be struggling with tenancy and housing debt. We've got housing providers looking at whether they can suspend evictions as they did in the pandemic and considering a rent cap from April. And then sort of more long-term solutions like, could we identify land in communities where there are groups of people who are interested in starting local growing schemes? Could we support the Donate the Rebate campaign, which crowdfunder are running, which is really already putting money into local charities like Citizens Advice, Cornwall Community Foundation, our food banks and Cornwall Mind. And that's already money that's going out to the sector so that they can help more people. And I guess more broadly, a subject that is very close to my heart is how can the public sector make funding for voluntary and community sector organisations more sustainable and much more long term? And that's something we've been asking for ages. So it was great to have that discussed as well.
That's wonderful.
It sounds fantastic. And just like the sheer basis that you cover, like so much variety there, because we're talking about the cost of living crisis and it affects all parts of our everyday lives, doesn't it? Whether it is your housing or whether it's your nutrition or everything, it has this knock-on effect. So I think it's fantastic that you cover such a range of that the leaders are able to commit to some of
definitely.
Emma, I want to talk to you a little bit about Jo Rusbridge from the Bugle Library of Things. I believe that there was a visit from Louise Wood. Do you know, you could tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Louise is the Service Director for Housing and Planning, and one of my team, Justin, who supports the Housing and Homelessness Alliance, had arranged for her to go over and visit Bugle Library of Things. She wanted to find out a little bit more what the little shop with the green sign does, because she drives past it a lot. So it was a really lovely opportunity for her to pop in and actually speak to the people who run it and to hear the stories of the people who use the library. And I guess what she found out was that the little shop does an awful lot. So it's a place full of warmth. You can pull up a chair and have a chat. You can access the community larder there and other things. And Louise came back and said she was so impressed. Clearly, Jo, who runs it, is extremely good at problem solving. You know, if somebody's got an issue, she will do her very best to find a solution to that. And she just loved the opportunity to sit down and talk to people and to hear their stories. And in terms of her day job, you know, going back into the council, it really gave her the opportunity to understand better what the impacts of the cost of living crisis are having on people in communities, and thinking about how in her role, when she's thinking about planning and development, what she can be doing to be trying to come up with those longer term solutions that keep people well and safe and happy in their communities and well housed. So one of the things that she said is that she left reflecting that a very little amount of resource is going a really long way at the Library of Things, and that we all need to find ways to better support grassroots organisations so that they can keep going and keep doing the wonderful work that they do.
It does sound good, doesn't it?
I love
the concept of it. And again, like you just said, it kind of just proves, doesn't it, that it's all very well talking about we need to do this or we need to implement change. There's people out there that are actually doing it.
It's not the same as doing. Definitely.
Yeah, it really is.
And there is just so much happening across our communities. It's one of the wonderful things about being in the role that I am, is that I get to hear all the wonderful stories of things that are happening, and often it's about responding to really, you know, severe need, but the stories are so inspiring and people just want to help.
Yeah, definitely. Could you tell us a little bit more about kind of the projects that you support and then these stories in general?
Yeah, so one of the things that we discussed at the Cost of Living Summit and also has been developed since then is the network of community hubs. I don't know if you've heard of that. Chaos are part of them. So one of the things that we were reflecting on was actually how do you get support as close to people as possible? And we've got so many different communities up and down the county who are doing things like Bugle Library of Things, where they're just based in their community, working to support those that are right there. And we're thinking, what could we do to support those those organisations to do that in a more consistent way, make sure we've got that resource across the county. So we've been involved with a whole range of voluntary sector partners in setting up a network of 37 community hubs to provide connection, support activities, some welfare advice, debt advice, all across the county, and that's been funded over winter to provide additional winter support. So it enables really small organisations to perhaps open longer hours, to heat their buildings for longer, provide warm refreshments, hot meals, alongside the usual things that they do. And that's something that we're really excited to support. And what's really brilliant about that is that lots of other organisations and buildings across the county have also joined that warmth network. So we've got things like faith groups, churches, libraries, we've got local pubs and hotels. My local pub down in Perranporth has just posted to say that they're open all day. People are welcome to just come in and sit by the fire. Family hubs, all sorts of things that are sort of popping up to just say, can we help? It's really exciting.
Yeah, it's really wonderful that everyone's kind of everyone wants to help.
Yeah.
Everyone really does want to help, and having that resource there and being able to get that funding is kind of vital.
It is. I also feel like it gives a real sense of community as well,
Definitely.
doesn't it? Like people coming together. But there's that famous saying, isn't there? Like, is it a problem shared is a problem halved?
I think
Something
so,
along
yeah.
those lines. But yeah, it's really nice to see sort of all the communities sort of coming together and supporting. Emma, you touched a little bit briefly there on the funding. Obviously, without funding, this support wouldn't be available. So where does that funding sort of come from?
Oh, it's a good question and a bit of a patchwork of an answer, to be honest. So, but again, that's one of the things that the voluntary sector does really well, is grabbing little bits of funding from different pots and bringing it together to make the best of what you've got. So we've had some funding, or the hub network has had some funding from the NHS to do some of that stuff. We've got funding coming through the Donate the Rebate from Crowdfunder. That's going to specific organisations like Cornwall Mind, Citizens Advice Bureau, some of the food banks. We've also got amazing organisations like Cornwall Community Foundation. So they already have a cost of living crisis fund, and to date they've awarded in excess of 50 grants over £275,000, and that funding's going to grassroots charities and community organisations to do the kind of work that we were just talking about, just really supporting people in their local communities. And they've supported all sorts of different organisations to do different things. So I'd say it's a bit of a patchwork. But we're really good at finding pots of money and making best use of them.
Yeah, definitely. So I've heard a little bit about the Donate the Rebate scheme / campaign before. Could you just tell like our viewers and anyone who might not know just a little bit more about it? Because it is really interesting.
It is really interesting. So it's being run by Crowdfunder. So if you do a search on hashtag Donate the Rebate, you'll be able to get to their website. And the concept is, if people who don't need the rebate that's coming from the government for their energy bills, which is £400 for all households, would you consider donating some or all of that to the Donate the Rebate campaign? And you can do that in a range of ways. You can donate the whole thing. You can do it, as I've done, as a direct debit for 6 months, or you could just donate a tenner, whatever you can manage. And what happens is that that's then about moving money from people who don't need that money back into organisations who are supporting really vulnerable people at the front line. And we've got a range of organisations in Cornwall who are already getting support from that money. So yeah, Cornwall Mind, Cornwall Community Foundation, Citizens Advice Bureau, food banks, and a range of others. So if you haven't yet done it and you can afford to, I'd really encourage you to jump on and have a little look at that.
Yeah, so that was hashtag Donate the Rebate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Love that. I've never heard of that before.
I heard of it. So we did a live broadcast a few weeks ago from the All Saints Church, I believe. It was the You Still Can't Eat the View. And there was a lot of talk about it then. And I was so interested by it. I was like, that's a really interesting scheme and campaign to get behind.
Yeah, no, it comes back to simple changes or little things can actually make a huge difference.
Yeah, that anyone can do, if you are receiving this rebate, but anyone can do any amount of money. It's just wonderful.
Brilliant. Emma, now you've mentioned some of the amazing sort of partnerships and different various organisations that you guys are involved with. I'm going to put you a bit on the spot here now, but like, is there any, what have you got like an example of one sort of partnership or program that has really sort of, that you found really inspiring?
I mean, there's so much going on across the county. I think it's the community hub network is something that is really interesting because one of the things that I think we can do better as a voluntary sector is to come together and collaborate more. And what's been really lovely with the development of the community hubs is they identified a need for people to be able to access the hub network, but in a single point of access. So in about 6 weeks, a group of organisations came together, including Chaos and a whole range of others, to develop a single phone line and single email for anyone who's worried about people in their community. They can access a personalised conversation through that gateway. They'll get a personalised conversation. They can have a visit in their home, and they get linked into wider support. It's open 8 till 8, 7 days a week, and it's got sitting behind that, which will help find the right support for people at the right time and in the right place. And I think what's really inspiring about that is the voluntary sector got together, saw a gap that needed filling, came together as a group of organisations. They're sharing staff, they're sharing IT and technology, and they're just saying, here's a single place, come there and we'll do the rest. And I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I've been hearing a little bit about these community hubs kind of being sat out in the office where I am. I kind of hear like Zion and Rachel talking about them. But they seem so good. It's like to have that one place where you can go and get that support is absolutely incredible, and it's accessible to everyone really, isn't it?
Yeah, and we'd love to see, something in every community. So we've got, this is not to say that there isn't already amazing stuff going on. It's what can we do to support organisations who are already doing amazing work and link them into that wider network of support.
Of course, yeah.
And other than obviously supporting and promoting, a lot of it comes down to awareness. It's getting the word out there that this support is available. Where do you see this going? Like, is there anything that you still really want to sort of campaign for, that you want to see happen next?
So I think there might be a couple of things that I'd be really keen to see. One is, I think we need to do more to work together to increase the immediate support available for local people and communities who are already struggling and are going to struggle more over the winter. So I think that it's a call to the voluntary sector as a whole and working with our public sector partners to do more together, to collaborate more, to share the funding and resources that we've got and make sure nobody is left cold or at home alone over the winter. But secondly, I think we need to make sure that we collectively spend as much time working together on the long-term solutions to prevent these situations from happening again, as we do to responding to the crisis. And I think it's really important that we spend that time thinking about how can we prevent people getting into poverty, making sure everyone has decent housing, they've got employment, human connection, people are healthy and happy and have a sense of purpose, because that means that individuals in our communities and we all are much more resilient for when some of the crises happen.
Yeah, that's really good. So I do really think all of it just kind of goes to show what happens when like everyone comes together.
Yeah.
It's
teamwork,
obviously,
isn't it?
Yeah, teamwork is dream work.
But it's true. And I guess, have you noticed, because from an outsider's point of view, I think I've volunteered myself in the past in various organisations. Have you noticed, especially over the last few years with the cost of living and everything, that the demand is a lot more? People are putting themselves out there to support more, aren't they?
I think they are. And one of the, I guess, blessings and learning from COVID pandemic was that the profile of volunteering was suddenly huge. We saw over 4,500 people volunteering with 250, I think, community groups set themselves up over COVID, and I think that really raised the profile of volunteering, and the fact that it doesn't have to be, a really big commitment. Actually, it's really valuable for you to take your neighbours bins out, or drop in and make sure that they're okay and have a cup of tea, or deliver some shopping or prescriptions, or whatever it might be that, you know, really resonates with you. I think that's been one of the benefits of COVID, and we are seeing a lot of people still wanting to come out and volunteer and support people in their local community, which is amazing. And I think that's really demonstrated to some of our public sector partners of all the time and passion and energy and enthusiasm there is out there in communities to really make a difference, which is fabulous.
It really is.
Yeah.
It is great. And as well, we're talking about the cost of living crisis today. We've asked our viewers today a question for the nation, and I want to ask you this question as well, Emma. We're talking about what are we doing individually to sort of to cope during this cost of living crisis. Bryna, we've talked about how she's got subscriptions for everything, and she needs to cut down.
I'm very guilty
on
them.
Very
guilty of that.
I personally have been turning my heating down. It's not on half as regular as it used to be. Is there any little changes within your household that you've made?
What you can't see, or you can see I'm wearing a jumper, you can't see that I'm wearing furry slippers under the table. We haven't got our heating on yet. So we're trying to put that off as long as possible. And so that's one thing that we're doing. But we are also looking at just our general budgeting and bills, to be honest. I think you can they can get away with you, can't you? You're sort of spending money without really thinking about it. So we're definitely looking at our overall budget and seeing where we can make savings. And we've bought an air fryer, and I'm not sure whether that's a cost of living crisis response or just the fact that I'm middle-aged. I don't know.
I think it kind of is, because my parents have bought an air fryer recently because as kind of a response to it, to make cooking and things cheaper like that. We know a few people in the office have been getting them just to kind of cook their meals a bit cheaper, because the cost of electric versus gas, I guess it's something works out cheaper. I've seen a lot of news articles as well.
Seems to be the in thing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But I think that's the thing, like what we're saying today, isn't it? It's little changes can go a long way, and not just making changes in our own personal lives, little changes helping each other.
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing. But yeah, brilliant. Emma, just want to say a massive thank you basically for joining us today, and for all the hard work that you guys do supporting within the community. Sort of final question, sort of really most importantly, where would you recommend people to go if they're looking for support, or how can they contact you? You know, plug away.
So I would say if you're worried about people in your community, then the Community Gateway is your first point of access. You can call 01872 266 383 or email gateway@ageukcornwall.org.uk, and I'll get those details across to you for you to pop up on your various socials.
I was just about to ask that.
Yeah, and that's an opportunity really to just have a single conversation, and that can link you into a whole wide network of community support. We've also got the Community Hub network on our website. So again, I can send you that, and that will give you information about where your nearest community hub is. But again, listen to your community and see what's happening in your community, because I think there are more hubs emerging all the time, and more spaces that people can go.
That sounds wonderful.
Stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been brilliant chatting to you, and thank you for coming on and sharing all the stories and the great work, and hopefully we'll have you on the show again another time soon.
Yeah.
Thanks very much for having me. Great to see you guys.
Thanks,
Thank
Emma.
you. Bye,
Take
Emma.
care.